Hello and welcome to our today's webinar with the dqMan team, and today's topic is all about the deep dive into FME's revised dqMan. Before we start into the topic, let me conduct one quick slide of housekeeping. Please note that all attendees are muted during the complete session. Should you have any questions, inquiries, remarks, please take a look at your GoToWebinar panel. Per default on your right-hand side, there is a little questions box and you can enter your questions into that box. I will collect all those questions and we will answer them in a dedicated Q&A session after the main part of this webinar. Please also note that this webinar is being recorded, and once we have it processed, we will share it with you after the session, of course. Now, today we have one speaker, which is Peter. He is the dqMan product owner and development team lead at FME SRL, and he will take you to all the bullets you can see on your right-hand side. And without any further ado, I would like to hand over to you, Peter.
Thank you, Mark. Well, also welcome to everybody who's here today to attend this webinar. So let's just get started. Maybe a few words about FME in case you're not familiar yet. FME is a German company. We provide services and products in the enterprise content management and business intelligence fields. The company goes all the way back to 1995. Currently, we have close to 300 employees, yearly revenue of 29 million euros, and FME has a number of offices in Germany, Romania, and also in the United States. dqMan is one of our products, and this is, of course, the main topic for today's presentation. So just as a quick overview, I'm sure many of you probably are familiar with dqMan already because it's been around as a free tool for a while. What it is, it's essentially an administration tool for OpenText Documentum. It packs a lot of features. It offers full support for managing pretty much every aspect of a Documentum Content Server. You can run scripts, you can run individual queries, you can manipulate objects directly, perform data analysis, comparisons, and so on. So our goal is to provide an application that is as feature-rich as possible, yet at the same time does allow a wide variety of typical administrative development and consulting scenarios to be accomplished just from within this single application without having to reach out to external command line tools, Documentum web applications, and all that other stuff. It's also highly customizable, and of course, we'll see more about this during the demo. I'm guessing one of the burning questions is what has changed in dqMan 22 as opposed to dqMan 6, which is probably the version you already know, and it's the last version that has been distributed as a free version. Maybe just a few words about the dqMan history. So the old dqMan, as we call it now, up to version 6, was indeed a free tool. This was developed by one of FME's employees, but that person, who by the way is still with FME, did not develop this for FME. He developed it in his spare time. So basically, he ran a one-man show here. He was the developer, the tester, he performed maintenance, he offered support. He's been doing this for the past, I think, 15 plus years. Of course, time passes by, priorities change, and that person no longer has the time available to actually fully develop, support, and update this application on a regular basis. And that's how it came to what happened this year. So dqMan has now been picked up by FME's product development unit and has been turned into a full commercial product with full support, continued development, certification with new OpenText Documentum versions as they come out. And of course, there are several updates and improvements to the product. First of all, we've changed the backend. Unfortunately, most of these big changes are not immediately visible, but now it is a modern native 64-bit application. It has full Unicode support, which is one thing the old dqMan didn't have. So if you had to work with anything that wasn't using a Western alphabet, you would not be able to see that information or otherwise handle it. So that's all done now. The entire Java Documentum backend has been refactored. It now uses Java native interface to communicate with DFC. So there's no more intermediate DLLs and any other workarounds. So everything is much smoother, cleaner, and it just talks to Documentum straight over DFC. We offer a full range of support and maintenance services. That means we'll have a regular product release schedule, probably every 3 or 4 months. We have complete support staff available and a support forum. And of course, we've added several changes and improvements to the 2 new features, which is what I am about to show you in the upcoming live demo. Okay, yeah, this is somewhat more of the same. So we are marketing this now as a commercial product, targeting enterprise customers. Using OpenText Documentum, we have updated the dqMan user interface. We have improved usability. Our main focus was on consistency because the various parts of the old dqMan did exhibit quite different usage patterns at some times. So certain areas of the application worked in one way, others worked in a different way. Looks were different between different controls in the application. So we tried to unify this, have it look and work consistently everywhere across the application. We have extended the set of features. We have extended the possibilities for customizing the dqMan interface and also customizing various features that work with the object model. This will make it possible for anybody using a custom object model on Documentum to actually adapt dqMan to their specific needs. As I said on the previous slide, we've completely changed the architecture behind dqMan, the entire backend. We have picked up this product now by the product department. It's here to stay, so development will not be stopped as it was the case with dqMan 6. Development will continue. New product updates, new maintenance releases will come out at regular schedules. Of course, we're offering full customer support for any dqMan customer, and we offer a number of different license packages. Oops. Sorry, I think I just got kicked out here. Okay. So before I start with the demo, I would just give you a quick overview of what I'm about to present. I will focus on the main user interface, essentially the, let's say, main workspace of dqMan, which is centered around working mostly with the DQL and API statements and commands. Also scripts, processing results returned by dqMan select queries. I will try to illustrate what is customizable in the dqMan interface. Again, the main idea behind this would be that you can adapt dqMan as much as possible to your own needs, workflows, object model you have on Documentum, and so on. And if you have some time left, then I would also show you some of the, let's say, secondary features that the application offers. So lesser used features, which might nonetheless be interesting for some of you. As a, let's say, preparation for the live demo, here's some of the main application areas. So I will then explain what each of these means in detail. For now, just a quick introduction to these, let's say, dqMan specific terms, we have what is called a repository navigator. That's one part of the interface. This is mostly used to display hierarchical data like folder structures, users and groups, the object type hierarchy, and so on. This is also not just for displaying that kind of information. It does, of course, offer all the necessary actions that can be performed on the respective objects. We have another thing called an object navigator, which is also quite a neat feature. Again, I'll go into more detail on this when we get to the live demo. This basically allows you to view an object in detail and also to navigate between different objects based on their relations between one another. So like going from a document to its folder, going from the folder to the owner, and so on and so forth. We have something called favorites, which is essentially a way to manage frequently used queries or basically any chunks, pieces, snippets of code. So if you have some sort of code or a query which you happen to use frequently, you can save it as a favorite. You can categorize it. You can assign metadata to it. You can share it with other users from your team. And then with a couple of clicks, you can always just quickly load that into dqMan and run it. We also have a fully featured script generator. So if you have to manipulate a very large number of objects, going all the way into the millions, then we have a full-featured script generator inside dqMan. You can use, say, a list of object IDs or, say, a CSV file as input and generate either DQL or API scripts from that. You can save script templates. You can transfer your script into dqMan script window and run it on the spot. So again, there's no need for you to assemble a script using Excel or your text editor or whatever other external tools. Another interesting thing is a object comparison feature, which allows you to compare any type, any number of objects, compare their metadata, propagate changes from your reference object to other objects. It even allows you to follow changes on an object as they happen. So you can just freeze the object at certain moments in time, do some processing on the respective objects, and then compare and make sure whatever your changes were supposed to be on that object have indeed been performed. We also offer an extensive data import feature. And this could be used either for generating scripts or for comparing data against what you have in your repository. This could also be used to compare data between different repositories, by the way. So again, this might be something that might be useful for some. We feature a complete built-in consistency checker, which already comes with some 70 or so predefined consistency checks and is also fully customizable and extensible. So whatever additional consistency checks you may use in your day-to-day work, if you're a Documentum administrator, you would be able to add those. And again, with a couple of clicks, you would be able to run your consistency check inside dqMan, view your results, and generate a repair script on the spot and run it. And finally, again, big topic is customizability. So as we go through all these various parts of the user interface, I will try to illustrate what and which parts of these controls are actually customizable and can be adapted to the user's preferences. Okay, and I guess it's time that we move on to the demo directly. So I'll just switch over to dqMan. I hope you can all see the application now. This is what it would look like by default. So just to reiterate some of the concept I just mentioned, on the left, we see that repository navigator. Currently, it shows the Documentum cabinet and folder hierarchy. on this repository, I can switch and display the type hierarchy. This is currently rooted at the DM document object type. Of course, this is fully customizable, so you could root it at DM sys object or whatever custom type you prefer. You can also manage registered tables here, which of course would, once registered, they behave just like object types. We also have full view and management of the user and group hierarchy. Again, this is probably something administrators would be dealing with frequently. And as I said, all these views offer full contextual actions here, depending on where you are and what type of object you have selected. And all these actions can also be customized quickly right inside dqMan. So you can just add custom actions to be run based on object types by specifying your own dqMan or API code. Okay, on the left, we have the object navigator, which I'll get to soon. Currently, it's empty. And in the center, we have basically the code and result area. So as you can see, I have a very simple DQL query here. If I just choose to run this, I get some results, which are represented in a grid, which is simply called the results grid. And down here at the bottom, I have the output and some performance data returned by Documentum. Okay, let's see what this does. So if you notice, we have 4 different, let's say, views here for our main window, which deals with various types of, let's say, Documentum code. So we have DQL and API, of course, and then we have DQL script and API script. Currently, I'm in the DQL window, which is kind of a, let's say, worksheet. Some of you may know this from, say, database administration applications. So basically, you have an area where you write your queries, then you run an individual query, and then you get some results. And this is what DQL is about. I'll show you some more just in a minute. Maybe let's just skip to API for now. This is, of course, different. The API language being basically a command line interface. This offers you a command line where you can just simply start typing an API command. Then you get a little pop-up here that shows you what parameters are required. And if you open the entire list, then you can basically filter through the available commands depending on what you're looking for. And this gives you a short description of each API command, and it also categorizes the commands based on whether they're get, set, or exec commands. So this is kind of a little heads up. You know, if you're doing something that's blue, that's pretty much safe because it only reads data. If you're running something that's red, you better pay attention what you're doing because these commands will, of course, make permanent changes to the objects in the repository. And then if you just run a command, let me just pick one of the object IDs from here to use it with my API command. As you run a command, of course, you'll get your output in the bottom area. So in this case, I simply dumped the properties for an object, and I can, of course, save this to a file. I can clear this, and whatever command I run, I always see the output here, and I can scroll through it or clear and start from scratch. And if I happen to run a set command, then I can use the second line here to specify the value I want to set. So this is pretty much what the API command is about. Okay, with DQL, of course, there's much more you can do. So as I said, this is basically a worksheet type view. So you can type, let me just go back here in history. You can type any number of DQL queries here. If I happen to press run, these are not going to be executed in a sequence. So this is not a script. This is just a number of different queries. And the way this works is I basically select the query I would like to run and either use the toolbar button or just do a right click and run whatever I have here. And then of course I get my output and I can continue working with that. You've seen me use a back and next button here. This is because dqMan automatically tracks what you're doing. So you have a full history here that allows you to walk back and forth between the commands you run. This history can be searched. So you can just enter a search term here. Let's just see all the queries that contain this path, for example. And then I get a filter, and then I can jump around in my dqMan history and see where this path has been used. I can also quickly switch between today's history that happened a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and so on. And my search terms are also saved, so I can come back to anything I have recently searched for. Okay, I just loaded my most recent DQL here, and I'll run this again to get some more objects in my results grid. I can actually close this for now because I don't need it to have some more room. And maybe let's have a quick view at the DQL editor. So most of the actions you can perform here are shown in the context menu. So I can choose to simply run any given query. I can choose to have a query run repeatedly. The purpose of this would be to follow changes to objects as they happen. So I may have some other code or job or something that performs some changes, and I could set a query to repeat every now and then, so I automatically get a refresh on my results depending on what's been done to those objects. In the meantime, I get usual actions such as undo and redo. I can clear my worksheet. I get the usual cut, copy, paste actions. Here, I can choose to format my query. I can choose to collapse it to just a single line. If I have a multi-line query, then I also have this code folding or collapsing, whatever it's called, depending on which environment you're coming from. So if I have multiple queries like I had here, I can choose to collapse the ones I no longer need. Should I still want to edit them and reuse them, I can just open any of these and continue working on them. If I place my mouse cursor on a query, then I get a quick overview of all the possible options and syntax for the respective query. I do, of course, get autocomplete. So if I have a select here and just place my cursor after the from keyword, press Control space, I get a listing of all the object types. If I place my cursor inside the select clause and do the same Control space, then I do of course get a listing of all the attributes that are applicable to my types. So this can also be set to pop up automatically as you type. So currently for me it's set to manual because I prefer it this way. It's one of the many options you can set for dqMan. All right, let's move down to this results grid. This is also highly interactive. So for one, if you just hover above the row header, you get some more information about each of the objects here. This information also depends on the type of object. So my first 3 entries are folders. You can see I get the ACL here and the complete folder path. And all the remaining entries are documents where I get information such as the document type and whether or not this has been checked out. Again, these are things that can be super easily customized, so I can choose to show as little or as much information in this pop-up as I like, and I can customize that based on individual object types. If we move to the header, then I can just right-click the header and quickly jump to different columns. Of course, this is not a big deal right now because I have some 25 or so columns, but if you're working on object types with, say, 100, 200 columns, then this gives you a quick way to jump to your desired column without having to scroll and search for it. You have a full filtering capability. So you can pick from the list of distinct values here. You can build some more complex filter expressions, like should this attribute value begin with, contain, do not contain, and so on. Various values I can choose to display empty or non-empty values, and so on. Let's just do all the empty values, and let's just do some of the available values here. Apply this filter. Now it becomes obvious that the filter is active because the filter on the respective column has changed. All my numbers have turned blue, and now it says that I am currently viewing 6 out of my 12 results. And I can, of course, apply filters to multiple columns. So I could also apply a filter to the object type and choose to exclude folders and leave only documents, which reduces my viewable results even further to just 3 out of 12 objects. And of course, I can just move columns around and play around with this for as long as I want until I get the view I'm looking for. If I want to come back to a non-filtered view, I can just simply click this, either jump to the columns that have filtered applied, or simply say clear all the filters, and I'm back to my complete view. Of course, I can just do any selection here and copy that to the clipboard, including the header row. I can duplicate this data into another dqMan view to use as reference. So this is no longer connected to my session. This is simply, let's say, an offline representation of that particular section of data. So I can use this, again, as I said, as a reference or to do some further processing with it. I can, of course, export information from here. I can dump this straight to Excel, or I can just output this to CSV files. I can remove lines I don't need from my results. So let's say I'm not interested in the folders. I'm only looking for documents here. So I can delete these lines. This does not delete the objects behind, of course. So this is strictly an operation that's being performed on this data grid. And then I have, again, depending on the object type, I have selected a number of contextual actions. Since these are documents, I get a lot of actions here for working with content, working with renditions, and I get some more generic actions here, which I can perform on documents, like linking and unlinking them to folders, moving them around, deleting the current version, deleting all the versions, changing ACLs, and so on. Again, all these actions are defined inside dqMan, and these are available for the user to be customized, extended, or any number of new actions can be defined. They can simply be grouped into categories, and then they show up as actions in the context menu of the respective object type. Okay, I think this is enough for the result grid for now. And finally, at the bottom, we have this little messages box. This is basically a direct output from Documentum as a response to the most recent DQL that has been executed. So if everything goes fine, you just get something like the total number of results and the response time. If I happen to, let's say, introduce an error here, of course, let's just say I have a typo here in my attribute name and I try to run this, then of course I would get to see the corresponding error message, and then I know where my mistake lies and I can fix that and simply run this again to have it working. If you're generally not interested in this information, it can be closed because you will always get the last line of that output in the status bar, as you can see now. So that's also an option. I'm used to working with this, so I prefer to have it enabled. Okay, since I have this Object Navigator open, let's move to Object Navigator a bit. This is quite an interesting thing. Let me just load an object in here. Okay, this appears to be, at first glance, nothing but a simple properties viewer for a given object. So why is there so much fuss about it? Well, it's quite a bit more, because as you may notice, it has 3 different views for the beginning. So you can just view attributes in their alphabetical order as a single list. You can view repeating attributes either collapsed on a single line or individually. You can view attributes grouped by their object type hierarchy. So if I just collapse these, you will see that there's the attributes that are inherited by every persistent object. Then we get all the well-known attributes from the DMSys object. And finally, we get the custom attributes for this custom document type. And as a third view, we have this another way also, which is familiar from anybody who's working with Documentum dumps. We have these 4 categories of attributes, like internal, application, system, and user attributes. Now, the interesting thing is, as you probably may have noticed, there are some links here. These are, again, part of customization, and these can be fully customized to your custom object models. So some attributes, of course, have a special meaning, and many of these actually reference other objects inside Documentum. As is the case with any typical document, a document has an owner, for example, which, of course, is a Documentum user. A document is owned by a group, which is a Documentum group. An owner, a document has an ACL, which is yet another Documentum object, and so on and so forth. A document is located in a folder, which is yet another Documentum object type. Documented versions. So these all have been defined as so-called identifiers inside dqMan. Again, this is fully open for customization. And whenever I start clicking, I can now jump from my document object to the corresponding ACL object. As you can see up here now, I'm on the ACL object using this name. Then from the ACL, I could, for example, open the various accessors and permission levels assigned to those. Then from the list of accessors, I could jump to this group. Then within this group, I can see the users who are members of the group. I can jump to one of the users. And this is pretty much why we call it a navigator, because you can actually use it to navigate your Documentum object model without having to go back to the DQL editor and keep doing select after select after select just to track down where a potential issue with an object might be. And this whole thing pretty much works like a web browser. So you get your history here, and you can at any time go back and forth between what's been done. So if you remember, we started with an MC type object, then we went to the ACL, then we went to the group, and now we ended up with a user object. And I can, of course, just use these back and forward arrows to navigate to my history just like I would with a web browser. I can refresh my objects. So if I happen to perform a change, maybe I'm running an update query in the meantime to make a change, I can quickly just do a refresh and see what has changed on my object. And I have yet another nifty feature here, which we call a quick peek. Might look like a search, it's a bit more than that. So this allows you to quickly jump to any object within your repository if you know some basic things like the type and a part of the object name. So if I'm just looking for, let's say, I have a number of dqMan test users set up here. So I know I'd be looking for users, and I know their name all starts with DQ. So if I just do this, I get a quick pop-up here, and I have 5 users that all contain DQ. I can pick the one I'm looking for, and I am immediately able to browse and fully see the attributes for this user object. Just like with the results grid, I get the same kind of context menu here. So again, I have a lot of contextual information. For example, because I am now looking at the user object, I have the option to get a login ticket for this user as an administrator, an action that, for example, would obviously not apply if I were to be looking at a document now. I can always dump an object. I can manage, since I'm on a user now, I can also manage groups, such as dropping or adding users from groups. I can always change an object's ACL, in this case, the user's default ACL. I can create a ticket for a user session, and so on and so forth. I can also do some other stuff here. Again, this is part of customization. I can define a list of, let's say, most frequently used attributes for any given object type. So I can quickly open up this menu and copy that value without having to actually look for it in this list. So I'll probably use the object ID frequently. I don't want to have to scroll through the whole list of attributes to get there. So it's in my list. At any given time, I can just say copy value of object ID. And it just did that, even though I'm currently looking at the user's email address. So if I just do a paste here, then I just got this from the clipboard, and it's this user's ID. Again, this is something that can be extended and adapted to any custom object types. So it's not limited to the system object types. And of course, I can copy whichever attribute I'm currently on. Okay, and down here, there's some more contextual information. We just call this panel connections. It is essentially whatever, we try to avoid relations because obviously we actually do have something called relations in Documentum already. But what this panel essentially does, it displays whatever relations or, let's say, connections the current object might have with other types of objects. So this would involve, for example, now that I'm looking at a user, I can see that this user is a member of these 2 groups. If I move back here to a group, then I can see, for example, that this group is used in the following ACLs. Of course, any of these are clickable as well. So if I choose any of these ACLs, I can jump straight to it. If I move even further back to an ACL, then I can see the documents and folders this ACL is being used in. Again, all of these are interactive, can be clicked, so I can choose to jump to any of these items. If I move even further back to our document, then I can see that for a document, I can jump to any of the versions this document has. Well, in this case, it's just one version, but if this document had multiple versions, then I could see any of those. And for a document, I can see all of its folder paths. Again, this document is only linked to a single folder, so that's why there's only one thing. If this document had content, which in this case it doesn't, I would be able to see the format for that content, and I would be able to jump to the DM format object definition or lifecycle state and so on. So I think you get the idea. Again, this is something that also can be extended and customized. So if you have other types of relations or connections between your objects in your custom object model, this is again something that can be done. So you will be able to add those quite easily by using a DQL dqMan would then understand what it needs to do, and it would show up as your custom connection or relation down here, so making navigation even easier. Okay, yeah, so I guess this concludes the, let's say, main work area. Let me just bring back the repository navigator. So this is where most of the work happens, and then still from this point on, you could do some more things with the result grid or the object navigator. Another thing I mentioned was, for example, this object comparison. So I can just simply select any cells from different objects. I can say add to comparison list, and then I get a detailed comparison view here. Obviously, all the differences are being highlighted in color. I can even choose to have only the differences shown to me. My first object, the leftmost object, is always my reference object, and all the other objects are then compared to my reference object. What I can do here is I could choose to, for example, do this synchronize with master, which means the corresponding attribute value from the reference or master object would then automatically get applied to all the selected objects. And I have several more options here, like what type of attributes do I want to display, all the attributes, only the attributes present on the master object, only the attributes specific to my custom type, what's my criteria for comparison, so do I want to consider case sensitivity, do I even want to consider the ordering of repeating attribute values, for example. So depending on what your use case is, you can switch these on and off as you like. And then, of course, at any given time, it is possible to remove objects from the comparison, refresh objects. It is, I can just come back to basically any view, like even from here, and go to add to comparison. I can yet again switch back and pick, let's say, the document with the Korean title and add this one to the comparison. Come back here, decide that I don't want this one and remove it. So I can just move back and forth at any time between these comparisons and keep adding and removing objects until I get whatever information I'm looking for. It is, by the way, also possible to compare documents between different repositories. So as you can see, this identifies my user and current repository, and don't think I have other repositories available at the moment, but I am, of course, free to open as many sessions on as many repositories as I like. So we have a tabbed interface here, as you've seen, and I can just switch between these at any given time, and as I said, open as many sessions as I need. So if I just run something here, this is a different session. I can pick something that's completely unrelated to my previous documents and add it to that comparison. And now you can see that this comes from my DQ_ADM session, while all my other objects are from the DM admin session. And all the gray cells here mean that this is a different object type. So these attributes, all the MC attributes, don't even exist for my fourth object type, because that's not it's not the same type, different thing. So as you can see, these are all MC type objects, while this is just a default Documentum DM job object. So this is basically the comparison. Okay, yet another thing that's probably useful in some scenarios is importing external data. So I can choose to import data from an external file. I can use a variety of separators, of course, so I'll just pick one of these. I get a preview here, and I have a number of options here, like trimming blanks, removing quotes, white space, and so on, removing duplicates, removing empty lines. I can choose where I want to start my import. I can choose whether I have a header row or not. And finally, I can get this into such a grid view inside dqMan, and now I can either generate a script from all of this, or I could use it, for example, to compare it against what I currently have. So I know that this data is a list of my cabinets. So if I just go back to my initial session, and let's say I'll quickly run a query that lists all my cabinets. I could do a nice trick here simply by going to extras, compare data, and I can say that I want to compare the output from my DQL from the DM admin session to my imported data, and I want to highlight all the differences in these records. If I move to my next screen, then I can choose the key, which this being Documentum data, obviously I would pick the R object ID. So this is the join, and then I can pick the attributes I want to have compared. So for example, I want the ACL names. Let's say I would want the subject title, owner. Oh, sorry, I have to add these in pairs. As you can see, it also matches the columns if you have the same information on both sides. But should this data be from an entirely different source, then of course you can at any given time just select whatever you want to match on the two sides of the comparison. So I'll just add the object name, and let's be done with this. It says compare finished. It says the number of records that exist at both sides and the number of differences. And this is right because I know I do have exactly one object that's different in name. So how do we see that? Well, we see that because this line got highlighted. So the light blue highlight means there's a difference, and the orange highlight means that's the column where the difference actually is present. We can see the same thing here. The same object has been identified, it has been highlighted, and indeed there's a difference here because so the letter O is doubled, while here we have a single O in the name. So this is how comparison works. And once I have these lines highlighted, I can choose to do something with this highlight. So one thing I mentioned I haven't showed yet is generating scripts. That is also something I would start either from a set of imported data or from a list of results. Let's just say that I want to generate a script for all my objects here. So in this case, these will be my cabinets. I would just click this corner of the grid. I get all my objects selected, and I can say generate script. This opens a new window. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Now I can choose whether I want to create an API script, a DQL script, or something else. Let's just go with an API script for a change, because we've been doing DQL all this time. I can have a header or footer section for my script where I might include the description, for example, like who created this script, what does it do, what is its purpose, and I can also create a footer, but let's move on with the body, which is the interesting thing. So this would basically work by using placeholders. So I can just type, start typing my script. let's say I would like to get the name of each of my cabinets output via a script. Something very simple, so I would use the API get command for this. I'm specifying the current session. And now, of course, I do need to specify an object ID. So this is what my template does. This is where I can use placeholders by opening these braces. And then I get an option based on the information I have selected in my table. So this lists all the columns that are available to me. And I can choose to pick the object ID. And I can choose to pick the attribute which I want to get. And for a very simple script, this is already it. So now if I click generate, this creates a script for me. And as you can see, for every object, I have 47 objects in total. I have 47 lines in my script. And my placeholder has been replaced with the object ID of each of the objects in the background. And of course, you can take this as far as you like. So you can include as many placeholders for as many attributes as you want. You can include as many lines for your script as you want. And basically, once you click generate, it shows the script. You can see it. If you go back to template, then you can continue editing it. Go back to generate until you make sure this is the script you want. Then you just click finish and you are automatically being transferred into the API script window. This is something I haven't shown yet. This is specifically for running scripts. So until now, we've been working mostly with running DQLs and analyzing the results or visualizing the objects in the object navigator. Now we are actually trying to run some scripts. Let me actually close the object navigator in this case, because that's not very useful for scripting. And let me show you some of the tricks we have here. I said I want to output the object names. Let's say I've just changed my mind. I want to output the title. Now, this would mean I'd probably have to go back to my DQL view, select my objects again, and do the whole script generation thing again, only because I've changed my mind and now I've decided that I want to output the document's title. There's a much easier way. We have a multi-edit capability here, so I can just double-click anything. I can click this icon, and then, oops. Sorry, bad click. Not what I wanted. So I do have to go through this again. And with just one single edit, I've completely changed my script. And now if I decide, well, I'd still like to go back to my object name, I can, of course, edit this. Or if I want to change my set command, let's say to dump commands instead, then I can do this as well. If I decide I want to change my session to, say, the session number 123, then I can do that as well. So this is very nice, very easy to use. And if you just want to make a minor change to a complex script, then this is something that can be done very quickly, very easily. So I'm just going back to my initial script now, and let's just give this a quick run. In this case, this being a script, what run does, it will actually step through all the individual commands going from the first line to the last line. So this is not about executing an individual command here. This is about running the entire script from beginning to end. If you can see down here, there's a progress bar, and we are basically done. Of course, this being a get, there's not much to see unless I just say log results. If I run this again, now I'm starting to see the output, and my output is the object name for each of my 47 cabinets. I can go even further. I can say log everything, clear my log, run this again. And now, in addition to the actual output, I also see the API command that has generated the output, and I also see the line number and can click that. So if I'm particularly interested in line 22, I can just click that, and I'm being taken there, and I can do something with this particular command. It gets even more interesting. You are free to set breakpoints in your scripts. So let's just set a couple of breakpoints. Let's see what happens. I start running my script, and it paused at line number 10. As it says down here in the status bar, breakpoint at line 10. Well, now that my script is paused, I can step through it, command by command. As you can see down there, as I step through my script, I'm getting the output. Or I can choose to let it run until it reaches my next breakpoint, where it pauses again, this time at line 29. Here I can use something else. I can just say, well, what if I just want to skip lines 29 to 40? Well, I can just right-click line 40 and say next statement. It has skipped all the previous lines, and now I continue my script execution from line 40 until it hits my other breakpoint at line 43, and again I click run, and now I let it run through all the way to the end. So these are some neat things that can be done here. What happens if I have an error? Well, so as I said, let's just create an error here by specifying an invalid attribute name, and possibly another error by specifying an invalid object ID. Again, I'll just clear my log, run my script, and it stops as it hits this error. I get my error message. Now, I cannot just skip an error, so I have to do something about it. In this case, I either stop my script and fix my error. Let's do this. Now I can run it again, but it should find the other error and stop. In this case, I have specified an invalid object ID. Now, another way to work around the error is by simply skipping this line. So let's say I am aware that I might have invalid object IDs. I do not particularly care about this. So again, I can just say set next statement. I've skipped over my error, and I keep running my script to the end. And this is basically it. By the way, it works the exact same way for DQL scripts, but there, of course, you would have complete DQL statements instead of individual commands like you have for API. So yeah, I mean, this is, let's say, it. This is most of what you can do with within a session window. This is how you run your scripts, how you manage them, and just to give you a quick glance at the options, there's a lot of options you can set here to customize, add custom actions, and basically adapt things to your preferences, your workflows, or your particular use case that you might have for dqMan. So I hope you could follow. I hope this wasn't too much, but of course our time is limited. So thanks again for attending. I hope you found all this useful, and well, enjoy dqMan. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for presenting, Peter. When we switch back to the presentation now, Okay, so before we head to the Q&A session, let me give a quick shout out to our web presence. dqMan is already presented in different social media platforms, as you can see, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. So if you want to stay updated on the latest news, since as Peter mentioned, dqMan is being improved, enhanced, and developed on a continuous basis, then follow our social media channels or take a look at our dedicated website at dqman.com. And we also offer a full online documentation at docs.dqman.com. And also, as Peter mentioned, we offer a full stack of service support at support.dqman.com. Should you have any sales-related questions, we offer a dedicated web form for that as well. It's on dqman.com/sales-information. And for the ones who might not know, FME AG also offers a separate product for content migration, which is called Migration Center, and that helps you to migrate between different databases, file shares, and ECM systems. And we currently have a year-end offering running for dqMan. So if you plan on purchasing dqMan within the remainder of this year, make sure to use the code yearend15 during the checkout process. This code is valid for all dqMan license packages for the single and small teams up to the enterprise section, and it's redeemable until December 31st of 2022. Last slide. It's dqMan you love to work with. Thank you for attending. We hope to see you again soon. And yeah, should you have any more inquiries, please don't hesitate to reach out. So everybody stay healthy, have a great day, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.